I spent 12 years taking care of my paralyzed mother. But then I read her will, and everything was left to my cousin. They say you only get one mother. But sometimes, that one is more than enough to ruin you. My name is Clara Monroe. I was 18 years old when the phone rang and my world stopped. I had just finished my high school graduation ceremony. My best friend was waiting in the car with flowers. My boyfriend had promised me a surprise dinner. And I was finally free. But then the phone rang. It was a nurse from St. Agnes Hospital. My mother had suffered a massive stroke while driving home. She'd crashed into a lamppost. When I got there, she was still alive. Her eyes fluttered open when she saw me. But that moment was short. The stroke had paralyzed her from the neck down. She would never walk again. Never cook. Never hold me. Never apologize. She was only 43. I was barely an adult. And just like that, my freedom was over. We didn't have any close family. Dad had walked out when I was 10. No siblings. No aunts who gave a damn. Except for her, Rachel. My cousin. My mother's golden child, even though she wasn't even hers. My mom had raised her for a few years after Rachel's mom died, and for some reason, my mother loved her more than she ever loved me. Still, Rachel lived states away and had her own life, med school, then internships, then some dreamy surgical residency. She sent flowers, called once a month, posted smiling selfies with captions like, "Grind now, shine later." But me? I didn't have the luxury to grind or shine. I had to wipe my mother's drool from her chin. We sold the house and moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. I gave up my college admission. I took night shifts at a diner. During the day, I changed her diapers, administered her meds, fed her mushy puree she hated, massaged her limbs. I read her books. I brushed her hair. I clipped her nails. I turned her to prevent bed sores. I heard her cry at night and scream at God, and I never once left the room. 12 years. 12 years of birthdays missed. 12 years of sleeping on a fold-out couch. 12 years of canceling dates, ignoring phone calls, watching my life pass by through the window while I fed her crushed carrots with a plastic spoon. And she never said thank you. Not once. Instead, she criticized me, told me I looked tired, that I was gaining weight, that I didn't comb her hair right, that Rachel would have done it better. Rachel. Always Rachel. Sometimes I wondered why I kept going, why I didn't just walk away. But the truth is, I loved her. Or maybe, more truthfully, I needed to be loved by her. And I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave her everything, she'd see me the way she saw Rachel. Maybe one day she'd say, "Clara, you saved me. I'm proud of you." That day never came. A month before her death, she got pneumonia. I sat by her hospital bed every night, reading aloud the same romance novel for the 5th time. She stared at the ceiling, barely blinking. Sometimes she squeezed my hand. And sometimes I imagined that meant something. She died on a Tuesday morning while I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth. No dramatic goodbye. No last words. When I stepped into the room, her chest was still. I didn't cry. I just stared. And in that quiet hospital room, I whispered, "I hope it was painless." The funeral was small. Rachel flew in for it, wearing a sleek black dress and designer sunglasses. She gave a speech that sounded like it was meant for LinkedIn. Aunt Meredith inspired my work ethic. Her strength shaped me. People clapped. I sat stone-faced in the front row. No one clapped for me. After the funeral, Rachel came to me, all sympathy and sleek lipstick. "You were amazing, Clara. I could never have done what you did. You're stronger than me." And I smiled. A weak, tired smile. Because somewhere inside me, I thought maybe I'd finally earned it. Maybe now, the rest of my life could begin. But I didn't know. I didn't know what she'd written in that will. I didn't know the final betrayal was still waiting. It wasn't just the will that broke me. It was what she chose to remember. And what she chose to erase. The will was scheduled to be read the week after the funeral. I had spent those days in silence, folding her clothes one last time, sorting through drawers filled with expired pills and tangled necklaces, staring at her empty hospital bed, not knowing whether I felt grief or freedom. Rachel was still in town, staying in a fancy Airbnb and visiting old friends like she wasn't here for a funeral. Meanwhile, I sat alone in that cramped apartment, trying to feel something other than numb. The lawyer's office was on the ninth floor of a cold, corporate-looking building. The nameplate outside his door read, Kenneth L. Hargrave, Estate Law. I had never met the man. But the moment he opened the folder and cleared his throat, something inside me twisted. He began reading. I, Meredith Elaine Monroe, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this my last will and testament. My hands were folded in my lap, my nails dug into my palms. Rachel sat beside me, legs crossed, looking like she was there for a brunch menu. It started predictably. Some jewelry for a friend, donations to the church she never even attended. Then came the house. The one we sold to afford her care. The one that had been in our family for generations. In the event of residual value or recovery, the lawyer read, I leave the Monroe estate to my beloved niece, Rachel May Linwood. I blinked. That had to be a mistake. Beloved niece? But the next line slammed into me harder than the last. To my daughter Clara, I leave my gratitude for her company during my final years. No monetary inheritance shall be designated, as her value has already been fulfilled through shared time. I couldn't breathe. That was it. No property. No savings. Not even the battered silver locket she used to wear, the one I had held onto every night since she passed. She left me gratitude. And even that sounded like a joke. The lawyer looked up. He had that face, the kind professionals wear when they've seen this play out too many times. He cleared his throat again, ready to explain that the will was legally binding. But I didn't hear any of it. My ears were ringing. My vision blurred. I felt Rachel's hand lightly touch my arm. I didn't know, she whispered. And for the first time in 12 years, I wanted to scream. You didn't know? Where were you when I spoon-fed her? Where were you when I missed job interviews, skipped birthdays, watched my youth rot in a room that smelled like medicine and crushed dreams? You didn't know because you weren't there. And yet she left you everything. I walked out of the lawyer's office without a word. My feet carried me like they didn't belong to me, down the cold hallway, into the elevator, into the street. Rain started falling. People passed me with umbrellas and purpose. But I stood still, soaking, clutching that folder like it contained a death sentence. 12 years. I lost my 20s to a woman who saw me as a nurse, not a daughter. I thought if I stayed, if I served, if I loved enough, I'd finally be seen. But she didn't see me. She saw Rachel. Even in death, she made that clear. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by boxes. Her wheelchair was still in the corner. Her slippers under the bed. Her voice still echoed in the walls. Every criticism, every command, every reminder that I was never enough. I opened one of her old journals. I shouldn't have, but I did. In it were notes from a time before the stroke. Lists, medical appointments, grocery reminders, and pages where she'd written about Rachel. Rachel passed her board exams. I knew she would. She's everything I hoped Clara would be. Talked to Rachel today. I miss her laugh. Clara's been cold lately. Distant. Clara got a new job finally. I hope it lasts this time. Every word stabbed deeper than the last. She remembered everything I failed at, and forgot everything I sacrificed. And somewhere between rage and heartbreak, I knew this wasn't just about inheritance. This was about erasure. She didn't accidentally leave me out. She chose to. And as I sat there, shivering, rain soaking through the cracks in my window frame, one truth rang louder than all the rest. She was gone. But the pain she left behind? That was very much alive. And so was I. And for the first time since I was 18. I didn't have to take care of anyone but myself. But I didn't want peace. I wanted justice. Grief ends eventually. But betrayal? Betrayal buries itself in your bones. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling as the minutes ticked by, every second louder than the last. My mind kept replaying her words in that journal. The will, Rachel's stupid whisper, I didn't know. I thought of the bruises on my arms from lifting her. The back pain that never went away. The dreams I buried. The silence I lived in. And now, nothing. No money. No recognition. Not even a mention in the obituary that I wrote. When morning came, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was hollow. And in that hollow space, something colder grew. Rachel came by the apartment that afternoon, holding 2 coffees and a strained smile. I thought we could talk. I didn't want her there, but I let her in anyway. She walked around like she belonged, like she hadn't disappeared for over a decade. I swear, Clara, she said, I had no idea she was going to do this. If I had known, you wouldn't have stopped her, I snapped. You never stopped her. You never visited. She went quiet. I could tell she thought she was helping, that her presence was some kind of olive branch. I want to give you some of it, she said. The money. I don't need it all. I stared at her. Do you think that's what this is about? I said. Money? She looked confused. I stood up. It's not the money, Rachel. It's the fact that she saw you. Even when you weren't here. Even when you forgot her birthday, didn't return her calls. And me? I wiped her mouth when she drooled. I sat up every night holding her hand. And she gave you everything. Rachel swallowed. Maybe she was just confused. Sick. No, she knew exactly what she was doing. She left soon after, coffee untouched on the table. And with her went the last scrap of politeness I had left. The days that followed were strange. I tried to return to some version of normal. I applied to a few jobs, cleaned the apartment, donated her clothes. But I couldn't escape the emptiness. Not the grief of losing a mother, but the grief of realizing you never had her to begin with. One night, I found myself sitting on the floor with a photo album. There were baby pictures of me with her, of course. But as the years went on, the photos changed. Fewer smiles, more distance. Then page after page filled with Rachel, holidays, college graduation, her first hospital coat. I wasn't in the second half of the book at all. That's when I remembered the storage unit. We had one downtown, a place we used to keep old family stuff when we moved. I hadn't been there in years. I found the key taped to the back of her dresser drawer, labeled just in case. The next morning, I went. The place was dusty, cold. The walls echoed. But the moment I stepped inside, I saw it, the chest. It was her old cedar chest. Locked. Heavy. I remembered it from my childhood. It always sat at the foot of her bed. She used to call it her memory box. I'd never been allowed to open it. But now it was mine. Or, it should have been. I broke the lock with a hammer. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Rachel. Each one started with, "My dearest girl. My bright star. My pride." They were never mailed. Just stored. Dated from the first year of her stroke to the very year she died. She wrote to Rachel, even when she couldn't move. Dictated them to a nurse, it seemed. There were poems. Jokes. Recipes she remembered. Regrets. Love. There wasn't a single letter for me. That night, I sat on my balcony with a bottle of wine and those letters. I burned them, one by one. Watched the flames curl the edges, watched the words vanish. It felt like I was burning the last pieces of her that lived in me. And when the fire died, I said out loud, "She took 12 years from me. I want them back." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was a theft of identity, of worth, of memory. She made Rachel the daughter. She made me the help. But she underestimated me. I had nothing left to lose. And a person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous kind of person. You can't mourn someone who buried you while they were still breathing. But you can make sure they're not remembered fondly. Revenge didn't come to me in a rush. It crept in like fog under a locked door, quiet, patient, steady. It started the night I watched those letters turn to ash. By morning, I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I was studying, learning. I opened my laptop and typed her name, Rachel May Linwood. She had a future so polished it gleamed. A rising trauma surgeon, a podcast guest, public health advocate, a face the hospital board used in their brochures, bright smile, humble story. The niece who once helped care for her paralyzed aunt. Her words, not mine. I watched an interview she gave just a few weeks before the funeral. The host asked, "Where do you get your strength from?" Rachel smiled. "My aunt. She taught me resilience. I wouldn't be who I am without her." Not a single mention of me. 12 years of my life, erased and replaced with Rachel's lies. So I made a choice. If she was going to wear the mask of a devoted niece, I was going to tear it off. First, I needed access. Rachel had always been smart, but she had one fatal flaw. She underestimated people she thought were beneath her, including me. When she offered to help pay rent, just for a few months, until you get back on your feet, I said yes. I pretended to forgive. I accepted the lunches, the calls, the fake concern. She even gave me her Wi-Fi password at the Airbnb. "Use it whenever you want," she said. "We're family." I smiled. "We are." While she went to interviews and galas and filmed inspirational reels in sunlight, I was busy downloading every piece of her life I could find. Emails, notes, cloud drives, bank records. And what I found cracked her halo in half. Turns out, Dr. Rachel wasn't as spotless as she seemed. There were emails, dozens, between her and the hospital's procurement manager. A shady deal involving resold surgical supplies. Expired instruments being reprocessed and reused. A side hustle that made her an extra $20,000 a month. Off the books. Illegal. There were photos too. Of her in the OR, using uncertified gloves. Signing off on shortcuts. Even a patient complaint buried deep in an internal report. Why was I billed for 2 implants when the doctor told me only 1 was used? I packaged it all. Neatly. Quietly. Anonymously. And sent it to the hospital board. Then to a local health journalist. Then to a few influencer doctors she followed. By the end of the week, her face was no longer on the hospital brochure. It was on the news. Her medical license was suspended within days. An investigation was launched. Patients came forward. And Rachel? She called me sobbing. "I don't know what happened. Someone must have hacked me. Clara, this could ruin my whole career." I pretended to be shocked. "Oh my God, are you okay?" She cried harder. "You don't think this was Mom, do you? Some kind of curse?" Mom. She still called her that, like she owned the title too. "I don't know," I said gently. "Maybe karma's real." She never suspected me. She couldn't imagine I had the spine. But I wasn't done. I went to the lawyer next. Asked for a copy of the original will. Asked if there had been any changes in the last year. He said yes. Rachel had flown down to meet my mother 2 months before her death. Suddenly, a memory returned, one I dismissed at the time. I'd come home from a double shift, and Mom's room smelled like fresh flowers. There had been a lipstick mark on a coffee mug. Rachel had been there. I remembered thinking, she never visits. The lawyer confirmed it. Rachel had brought a notary. She'd helped Mom update her wishes. I filed a challenge. Claimed coercion. Claimed manipulation. Claimed diminished capacity. I didn't care if I won. I just wanted the process to be public. And it was. 2 weeks later, the hospital officially terminated Rachel. Her medical board hearing was moved up. Her name was no longer respected. It was whispered, questioned, mocked. I didn't need her money. I just needed the world to see who she really was. Then came the final blow. I made a post. Just one. A photo of me holding Mom's hand during one of her worst nights. The caption, 12 years. No inheritance. No acknowledgement. But plenty of stories to tell. I let the internet do what it does best. People started digging. My inbox flooded. Journalists reached out. Nurses remembered me. Caregivers backed my claims. Rachel tried to post a rebuttal video, tearful, defensive, manipulative. But the tide had turned. She had spent years building a public image on a lie. And now the world saw the truth. She wasn't the daughter. I was. Sometimes, revenge isn't the end of the story. Sometimes, it's just the doorway to a darker truth. The silence after revenge is strange. It's not peace. It's not satisfaction. It's more like standing in a room where a bomb just went off. Everything's still, but nothing intact. Rachel vanished from public life. Her career was in ruins. She moved back east with a PR firm trying to rebrand her as a misunderstood innovator. But the damage was done. I didn't hear from her again. And as for me, I finally started living. I moved out of that apartment. Got a job managing a local art studio. I enrolled in night classes. Made friends. I stopped introducing myself as someone who used to take care of her mom, and for once, I was just Clara. But the thing about walking away from your past is, it doesn't always stay behind. 3 months after the will contest, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten. Inside was a photograph. A grainy one, clearly old. It was of a woman, smiling. Holding a baby. The woman was not my mother. And the baby wasn't me. There was a note paperclip to the back. 4 words, in clean, block handwriting. Ask Kenneth. Start there. Kenneth, the lawyer? Confused, I went straight to the firm. Kenneth Hargrave had retired, but his assistant still worked there. I pressed. I begged. I showed them the note. She hesitated. Then finally, she said, "There's something you should see." In the archive room, buried in a thick manila folder, was a letter. It was a sealed envelope addressed to me from my mother, dated 1 year before her death. The assistant explained, "She asked for this to be given to you only if you ever challenged the will. We never thought you would." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was my mother's handwriting, slanted, weak, but clear. "Clara, if you're reading this, then you must be angry. And you have every right to be. I never told you the truth, not because I didn't trust you, but because I thought it would hurt more than it helped. But you deserve to know now. You were not born to me. You were left at the hospital where I worked. Abandoned. No name. No history. I was 31. Lonely. Divorced. I told everyone you were mine. Even Rachel. I raised you as my daughter. But over the years, I struggled. I saw Rachel grow into everything I wanted for myself. And you. You reminded me of the life I never chose. I'm ashamed of that. Deeply. But what I can never say enough, what I didn't know how to say, is that you saved my life. Not Rachel. Not anyone else. You. I didn't leave you anything in the will because I thought you'd leave before me, start a life. And I hoped Rachel would give you what I didn't. A clean break. But if I'm wrong, if you're still there, then please know. I loved you in the only broken way I knew how. I'm sorry. Narrated. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat in the parking lot, letter trembling in my lap, the truth unraveling everything I thought I knew. I wasn't her daughter by blood, but I had loved her like one. She hadn't just betrayed me with the will, she had buried the truth of who I was. Hid it so deep, even she had started believing her own lies. And yet, that final letter wasn't a weapon. It was a wound. For the first time, I realized she had loved me. Just not loudly. Not clearly. Not the way I needed. I went home, lit a candle, placed her last letter beside the ashes of the one she wrote Rachel. And I said goodbye. To the woman I thought she was. To the version of me I'd spent 12 years trying to prove worthy. To the idea that revenge would heal everything. It didn't. But it did give me this: clarity, control, closure. A few weeks later, I got a message on Facebook, a name I didn't recognize. It simply said, "I think I might be your brother. I saw your story. My mother worked at St. Agnes around the same time. She told me something before she died. Something about a baby girl left behind." I stared at the message. Then I smiled. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end after all.